Hey, all you junior Ghostbusters, Killian here, and what I've got for you today is an unboxing of my copy of the Ghostbusters board game 2. Now, this is going to be a bit unique for some people because, for those of you who don't know, I backed the game to such a degree that I was at what's known as the Yeti tier. And what that means is, not only did I get the game and all the expansions, but I also got to become a piece in the game. That's right, I am canonically a Ghostbuster, which is pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how my piece turned out, and also seeing how the game looks. Part of the reason I'm making this video is to share it with you guys. A lot of you guys were not able to become a Yeti because of the price involved. It was fairly expensive. I won't go into detail, but freely available online if you want to look that up. And the other reason is it's a way for me to have documented what was in the box when I opened it. Cryptozoic has, the makers of the game, have had issues with shipping and damaged pieces. They've been very generous with providing replacement pieces if people ask for them, but I want to make this video to somewhat show that not only the coolness of this process of getting this game and these pieces, especially my own piece, but also to share a bit of the frustrations that some people have had in the process, myself included, and see if there's anything that needs addressing for either future Kickstarter campaigns by Cryptozoic or for fans who would be tempted to back further projects from Cryptozoic, especially at high tier levels like I did, just knowing what they get into. So I'll be touching on a little bit the process I had working with them as we unbox it. So let's get cracking. First, before we begin, I want to apologize in advance for the mess behind me. I'm in the middle of a big reorganization slash move of my place, so a lot of boxes and clutter strewn around. It's not usually this way, it's a lot more neat, but please take that with a grain of salt. Cool, let's begin then. Let's first just adjust the camera. You can see behind me the box that the game came in, along with a few others. I'm going to get back there in just a moment. So, let's take a look. So, this big box right here is the copy of the game that I received. And I want to show you some creasing on the box that likely happened in shipment. I don't blame Cryptozoic at all for this, but if there's any damaged goods inside, that's probably part of the cause. Now, I received this on 9/17 at 10:10 a.m. and haven't been able to open it until today, which I believe is the... I will tell you in just a moment. Sorry about this. It's about 2:50 now, and my computer is not giving me the date. Awesome. One sec while I check the calendar. It is, I believe, the 16th. So, September 16th, I should clarify. So apologies for that. Cool. So, this big old box is the board game, and we'll take a closer look at the contents inside. But just to give you a size comparison, this is the box the original game 1 came in. As you can see, it's a lot smaller. Not sure if that speaks to the content inside or the extra packing they had for protecting the goods, but we shall see. But the box itself is obviously far side bigger. To give you a better sense of size comparison, here's sort of a standard size trade paperback, obviously something relevant to people who are fans of the canon. As you can see, fair size taller than standard size paperback, and a fair size wider as well. Likewise, trade paperback, I should say, for comics. Compared to the box the Ghostbusters board game role-playing game came in. As you can see, a little bit bigger in terms of height, in terms of length and width. You can see it's a very big beast. So, I'm excited. Let's crack this thing open and see what we've got. So, take out the knife. I will bring actual pieces closer to the camera so you can see the detail work on them, but being very careful while I open this not to hit any of the internal packaging. Let's it open. So while I'm doing this, some of you are probably curious as to what the process was like for getting the Yeti tier, or what the Yeti tier entailed. Well, the Yeti tier itself gave you the opportunity to have your art drawn by Dan Schoening from the IDW Ghostbusters comic. You can see some of his art here on the trade paperback I was holding up earlier. Ooh, cool. In this particular issue, or series, he does a pretty good job at mimicking both the real Ghostbuster style and his personal style. His personal style for the movie busters, you can see here on the my left and here on my right are the obviously real Ghostbusters. So I got character art for myself. And the funny thing was that my first round of character art that I got a concept sketch from him was fairly unflattering. It was actually had a kind of an upturned nose, childish pig-like expression, if I can just make sort of a goofy face for the camera. Kind of like this, but also like, look at me. If you go on the Facebook group for the Ghostbusters board game, I will link that along with the character files for my piece, the 3D model, and also the character card scan, as well as that original concept art. So you can grab that fairly easily. It'll be on the group page under downloads. The Facebook group, just look for Ghostbusters the board game. But I digress. I will continue opening the box since that's what many of you are here for. So it was fairly unflattering, let's just say. One of my friends described it as that version of the character art would be the kind of person who would let the ghosts out of the containment unit. Which I certainly was not. So we got a chance to make some room so we can have space on the table to stack all the pieces that I bring out. So I asked Dan Schoening, Eric Burnham. Dan is the artist, Eric is the writer. Sorry, just crossed my wires for a moment. So asked him to redo it. He was kind enough to. Though I had no direct communication with Dan, I had an intermediary from Cryptozoic. I believe at that time it was Deccan Wheeler. I should probably not name names, but let's just say that Deccan Wheeler was a very good person to work with and had no issues when working with him. We moved on to working with Matteo Wilson, who was the game designer for the game. And for those of you who don't know, I am a game designer in my own right. I have a fairly lengthy portfolio. The biggest claim to fame I have is working on a Facebook game based off the House TV shows, House MD Critical Cases, and as well as other Facebook mobile games. You may have also heard of Dragon Veil. That was a game that I had worked on for a period of time. One of those games that have been in the iOS App Store for forever. But he and I had an interesting back and forth, and as you'll see shortly, the logic behind my piece was to give him a dark matter generator pack from Ghostbusters the video game. If you're familiar with that at all, it had this really cool blue, slow, freeze ray type effect it used for its weapon discharge, as well, which when it came in contact with enemies would first slow them down and then ultimately freeze them in place. But if you had them in their frozen state or their crystallized state, you could switch the function to a secondary mode, which was like a shotgun, which, given the number of enemies that normally ran up to you and attacked, there were a lot of zombie-type creatures, book manifestations that were kind of feral, clawed creatures in the game. Having that functionality was excellent to counter those creatures, but also could shatter those creatures, those ghosts, that you've taken the time to freeze. So I really loved that sort of concept and really wanted to have that reflected in my game piece and the game itself, because so much of the game, especially in my play sessions, had been about chasing ghosts around the map that kind of dragged the experience on and down. And this piece was somewhat of a counter to that. So Matteo and I worked on it. Yeah, some pushback with regards to the types of terminology and the types of how pieces move in the game versus the way I want the piece to manage movement of enemy pieces. But ultimately we came up with a compromise, and I think it hopefully will ultimately show in the game when you guys get a chance to play it, once you print out your own copies of the card. But enough of my blathering, let's open things up and see the piece de resistance. I'll touch more on the process as we continue. So, here is the big old baby. My copy of the board game. Part of the Yeti tier, I don't know if you guys can see in the camera, there might be a bit of light reflecting off of it, but part of it was that you could have the devs sign your copy of the game. So I believe this is Eric's signature. I'm going to guess this one's Mateo, and this one I'm not exactly sure. But that is really neat. Looks like they shrink wrapped it as well, which is cool. See the back there. All the details of the pieces that are included in the base game, or the deluxe edition of the game, I should clarify. Let's open up the old board game box and see how size compares, just very briefly. This is cool. I'm really glad to have this. So, here's a size comparison to Board Game 1. Looks like Board Game 2 is significantly bigger in terms of height. There's space concerns I had with the original board game. So in terms of just vertical height, it looks like they're about the same. But in terms of width, I think you guys can see that, sort of putting them flush together, you can see that the white version, the 2 board game, peeks out a bit more. What I'm hoping is this box, the original box, was very densely packed. Getting pieces back into the box was very difficult with all the plastic packaging to protect your pieces. So I'm hoping is they're a bit more generous in space with your pieces. Some of you may be wondering why I keep the old board game shipping box around. There's just a ton of extras that Cryptozoic gave you for that game that it does not fit in this original box unless you take out the plastic protected packaging. And it fits fairly well in the shipping box, so I decided to keep that around, and it fits fairly well on my shelf. I'll probably do the same thing with Kickstarter Choose box, but let us put this guy down and continue. So really excited to open this up. We also got to make some more expansions in the box, as well as myself. We'll see that in a moment. Let us crack this open and see. So if I'm taking out the plastic, shrink wrap. It's interesting they re-shrink wrapped after they got the signatures. I'm glad they did that. I'm sure it protects the quality of the box. The other box, if this is anything like the old quality cardboard, was very scratch resistant, so I think that I will be happy with this. Oh god, I love the shine on this, just the reflective surface of the Ghost logo. I've always been partial to the 2 logo. So, I'm going to take that plastic off, bring this box a little closer to you to show the internal guts. Depending on how long this takes, I may make it a part 2, or make it 2-parter. So we open it up, nothing but normal cardboard on the inside, but the first thing we see is the instructions on the board game manual, which is probably a good segue to another beat in the story of the Yeti tier. So one of the cool parts of the Yeti tier was not only did you get to canonically become a visual Ghostbuster, but he also got incorporated into the IDW story, or at least to a degree. There's multiverse shenanigans going on in the comic canon, so whether or not we're part of the main timeline or some splinter of that remains to be seen. But myself and about 12 others, 4 of which I'm in fairly close contacts, and we have plans for future things using us as a team. We got a chance to define our Buster. So, in the board game, there is a dedicated section. Looks like it's all of these black pages that details each of us and what what our role in the story is, our background, etc., etc. I don't want to get too fanficky, but I like the story that I came up with. Essentially, it is myself, but just give you a little bit of my own backstory, I grew up in Brooklyn Heights when I was very young. We moved away shortly thereafter when I started first grade, and it was interesting to live in New York City, and we'd often go back and forth. My parents were business people. Father was a stockbroker. Mother was a international business manager, among other things. We got a lot of exposure to New York, not only from their work life, but also some family that lived in the area on my father's side. So the what if I came up with was, what if I had remained in that area much longer, and worked briefly at Ray's Occult Books, getting to hear stories of the heyday of the Busters between the first and second films when they were pretty much retired. Obviously, time is a weird thing in Ghostbusters. Age as well. While it's set in the 80s, the film, the comic continuity is left nebulous so that it could be modern day. So it was interesting. But suffice it to say, I had also mentioned that I had went on to become a game designer, but because of my time with Ray, he was one of the first ones that he called when this crisis that the board game plot is centered around occurred. Eric translated part of that into me experimenting with a prototype version of the Dark Matter Generator pack that evidently something went awry and has replaced one of my internal organs. While not explicitly stated in the canon, I suffer from selective eating disorder, so I would like to think that in this version of the universe, that is part of the cause, rather than some odd psychological neuroses that I suffer in real life. So, joking aside, it was really cool to have that back and forth with Eric, and getting a chance to have him as a bit of a contact. Now that I have a channel to communicate with him, I may use that in the future for future plans. Fair warning, Eric, but it was really cool, and I was really glad with what he came up with and how I turned out. So let's continue. Also, if the lighting is a bit weird, if I'm showing a bit more red than usual, I apologize. Again, we're in an apartment complex. I've tried to get the lighting as good as possible, but one has to make sacrifices to be able to do what they do. So, moving on. So that is the instruction booklet. Looks pretty hefty. About 31 pages, plus cover and back cover. One thing worth mentioning is that evidently there have been reports of rules being missing or just flat out incorrect in this version of the instructions. There is a PDF that is forthcoming once all of the replacement shipments get out that will address all those issues. One of the big criticisms I had heard was in the Get Real Ghostbusters pack, there was, no rules for the Ecto-2 helicopter, which is a new vehicle to the game if you bought that expansion. So that is good to know and something that will probably need to be addressed. Next comes the tiles. I'm gonna show you a bit of my butt while I'm unpacking the next section of the box, but as you can see here, next layer are the game tiles, and this looks really cool because I don't know if you can notice, but down here this one looks like to be the ruins of Ray's Occult Books. Oh my god. This one over here is Peter Venkman's World of the Psychic. Oh man, this is really cool. Apologies for you geeking out. Let's just open this guy up and see what we have. Because for those of you who don't know, we've got two-sided tiles that... I'm trying to think of the best way to open this without scratching anything. I think I got it, but keep your fingers crossed for me, folks. So, for those of you who don't know, the Ghostbusters board game has basically two-sided tiles. They are flippable, so they can have various configurations of stages and various levels. You can also mix and match, evidently, between board game 1 and board game 2 to come up with interesting combination and unique scenarios. So that is cool. Looking forward to messing around with that. But let's see what's on the flip side, pun not intended, based on the old Real Ghostbusters episode of these tiles. Speaking of that episode, it sounds like we've also got the People Busters in this set, in which that was the episode they debuted. Oh my god. Is this what I think it is? Sorry. Marvel later, look around more. So, side A, I mentioned, Razor Colored Books, Peter Venkman, Worlds of the Psychic. Backside. Looks like we've got two, I'm going to guess, museum stages, based off the little arts palette there, and a few other things as well. That looks a lot worse shape than I would imagine. I'm kind of curious what that's really supposed to represent. But what I think this guy is over here is the firehouse level. That's Janine's desk, if I'm guessing correctly. That's really cool. Especially since that's something that really has been demanded by fans for quite some time. For those of you who don't know, I run a series of polls of content we want in the game, and the firehouse is one of those things that's just been constantly demanded for a while. This looks like the jewelry store scene from Ghostbusters 2, which is really cool. And this backside, I'm not too sure. Not really too much of descriptive detail, but I'm going to guess more museum tiles, given sort of the column there and the, I don't know what you would call this, ladder, trolley, cart that Dana uses and Ray uses later in Ghostbusters 2. So those are cool. But the firehouse thing is super exciting. And these tiles are really excellent homages to stuff from the film. So moving on. Already about the 10-minute mark. Another thing that was included in that little pack was rules for a spectral carriage. I believe Janosch's piece uses that, as well as a few of the stream tokens. Now these are used to indicate how many hits you've gotten on a particular enemy. One of the cool things I found out interviewing Mattia Wilson from formerly Cryptozoic, now working freelance, is that the pieces themselves, the minis, were designed such that they could have these stream tokens just put on them on some little hook or feature of them so that you could clearly indicate, okay, 1, 2, 3, that's how many tokens you have, rather than stacking them on top. Which I thought that was a really cool design note. I'll have to read these spectral carriage rules later, but that's kind of neat. They put so much thought into Janosch. Let us move on. Also I should mention, looks like up here we've got caustic slime tokens. I think they lifted that from the Ghostbusters video game. Essentially, as you take more slime damage, various effects will occur. That's just my guessing. I haven't read the rules yet. As you can see, I'm opening up this just now. Looks like we got more tiles as our next layer. Let me just put that back so you can get the full experience. Next layer is more tiles. I'm going to open these guys up again. As we're doing that, I will, I guess, continue the story. Got to figure out how to best open this. Continue the story of the Yeti, I should say, the Yeti process. So, the contact I had at Cryptozoic initially went dark. I didn't know what had happened. Either they got promoted or moved on to another project or let go. I'm not sure. And eventually I got in contact with someone else from the company. I was no longer dealing directly with Mattia or others. Thankfully by that point I had gotten my rules in, got my character sketch back, and gotten agreed on the story of the title of my character. The big concern, or big outstanding item, was the 3D model of my piece. I was really concerned that I was going to have my piece not be great. Essentially, given the initial art, not mix-up, but differences, I didn't know what quite to expect. So I was in pretty regular email contact with Cryptozoic. They initially were fairly responsive to my emails, but as the process went on, they just were not getting back to me. I believe what had happened, just to give you a bit more of a sense of the timeline, was the 3D artist, whose name escapes me, unfortunately, I apologize in advance, but he had worked on Kingdom Death Monster. By the end of this video, I'm sure I will look it up and let you guys know who it was. But he had made a model of my character and provided you a couple of screenshots of that character. And one of the things that I was concerned about was that the images that I had seen were fairly limited. Essentially, they were only at one particular angle, from the front and from the side. Not above, not below, not all of the awesomeness you can see with a 3D model. I had asked if I could either get the 3D file that was in process, so I could sort of vet that, or alternate screenshots. And that's when radio silence occurred. The person I was interacting with, I emailed about once a month for about the duration of 6 months with no response, which was unfortunate. But ultimately, nothing happened, and we had to move on. When they did get back to me, it was about, what I had to do after that point was reach out to a Cryptozoa contact who was on the board game group and Facebook group page, and let them know the issues I was having. He went above and beyond. I'm trying to avoid naming names, but you know who you are, and thank you very much for that. But by that point, the 3D model had made, stuff had been sent to the printers, and there wasn't really many changes that can be good done. Thankfully, I ultimately got the 3D model file, everything looks good, but it was fairly frustrating that I wasn't able to get a prompt response, especially since I had spent many $1. Again, won't go into detail quite yet. Got more tiles for you. Looks like this is a basketball court. If I'm gonna guess, it's probably from Ghostbusters 2. This is the jogging ghost scene. If I have to guess what this one is over here, maybe Dana's apartment, or maybe even Peter's. Though it looks like a bit of a cafe, maybe even. I have to do a little closer look. Gift shop with Ghostbusters items, maybe Raise Occult's books, a gift shop section. And this one looks like some sort of a, not quite sure, ritual site. There's a bunch of candles you can make out around a pedestal. Though I'm not sure what the rest of this stuff might be. It's next to a sidewalk, so if I had to guess, possibly a excavation site. They found this sort of occult spot. But I'm not quite sure. Let's go to the other side. Slimed up roads, primarily, it looks like. Give you a look at each of those. See a police car over there. I don't think it's calling out a specific location. Possibly an homage to the first board game's location tiles. Slime is a big part of this set. Moving on to the next page. I'm just going to flip that back over. We've got more roadway, an arcade, back alley trash bin and trash fires, and want to say a video shop or bookstore with a bathroom inside. So this is the store I mentioned earlier. I'm only getting a glance at these. I'm basically seeing it this first time, as same as you guys. So anything I recognize, I will let you guys know, but I can't really make out many of these. But still, these are really cool for sort of a world-building set of pieces. Next set of tiles look to be corner grocer or supermarket, maybe a liquor shop, playground with a slide swing set, but also a portal opened up in the middle, some sort of cafe or restaurant, and a laundromat. I don't think these are specific call-outs to locations, just sort of another set of cool locales. Cool. And flip side of those guys. Actually, let me check. Did I did flip side of. Actually, I'm not sure I did flip side of the the second set of tiles. So more roadway, construction, and that is it. You can see a little bit of a subway car crash down there, which is kind of cool. Kind of reminds me of the Ghostbusters video game multiplayer level that had sort of the car wrecks in the city street. This is a flip side of tile 3 set. Pool of slime, more slime, and train tracks, possibly an homage to Ghostbusters 2. Here we've got the Ghost World tile. Essentially, if I remember correctly, this indicates what ghosts appear in what order to spawn when you play the game, and if you have no more ghosts to summon, then it's game over. This is an Ecto 1 card to use in lieu of the actual game piece, or rather, it is used to track who is in the car and who is not. More stream tokens. The PKE meter, which when you roll a die, that number will indicate the direction the ghost will go. Kind of a very light AI system. Flip side, more of the Spirit World tile, and back sides of the Ghostbuster tiles. More action tiles. Slime has various effects in this game. Before, I believe it only took away at action. Now it takes maneuver, takes away line of sight, takes away movement, hit, and caustic, which I'm not sure what it means in that context. You have -2 on the flip side. Not sure what these pieces represent quite yet. You've got more stream tokens on this side. You've got a slime counter. I believe this indicates what you can do regarding a certain player ability. I need to look that up a bit more. Proton pack tiles, I'm not sure what they represent, and plasm tiles. So maybe they're like landmines, not sure. But over here we've got Vigo, the Master of Evil. Try to mess with our boys. That ain't legal. And cool little lithograph of the in-store version of the box. You saw that shiny white version of the box earlier, and the front had the sort of reflective material. This is what more players will see when they go into their Target or Walmart to buy. But we also got a copy because it's cool art from Eric Burnham. Or Dan Schoening, I'm sorry. I keep mixing those two up. I'm so sorry, guys. Can you ever forgive me? All right, cool. We got about 12 minutes left on the recording time. I just messed up my camera angle, so I'm going to adjust that fairly quickly. Also going to try to put this up unedited, so I apologize in advance if it's a bit loosey-goosey. Hopefully that's okay. I'm going to peek. Just give me one moment, guys, to fix the camera. I think that's good. Let us move on. So, bring these tiles back. The next layer looks to be the biggie. Oh, this is really cool. We got all the minis for the game. I won't open these up quite yet now, get away fruit fly. But one of the things that I love is that the game takes care to have the various pieces be inspired by various aspects of the Ghostbusters canon, whether it be the cartoon, toys from the toy line, my face is out of frame, movies, as the central theme of this guy was Ghostbusters 2, etc., etc. One of the cool things you might not notice is that, unlike Ghostbusters Board Game 1, there is a protective cover on top of these pieces, which I think is really cool in protecting them. I'm not going to go over each individual pieces, but it looks like all of them came in pretty good shape, at least this layer. You've got, just to give you a few examples, down here, you got the Granny Ghost from the Kenner toy line. You've got the Courtroom Busters from Ghostbusters 2. I've just tossed out all these cards that are important to the game. Sore Throat from the Kenner toy line. Just a bunch of homages to the game, original show, game, toys, etc., which are really cool. But since these fell out, they're eager to come and be inspected, so we shall do that. Just a moment while I do so. Put down the minis and open these guys up. So ultimately, I got the 3D piece just to continue that story while I opened this up, and things got resolved. But it was unfortunate, especially since I had spent so much on getting this version of the game, that customer service was so lax. I understand they're a business and have limited resources to address concerns, but even so, guys, I really hope that they make another expansion, but I really hope that people are careful in their purchasing decisions, and that Cryptozoic in particular has learned a lesson from this experience. So all these look to be character and scenario cards. So up here we've got Pytor Venkman, both Courtroom and Slime Blower variants. Courtroom has a regular proton pack. See on this side all of his various abilities, the experience level, which dictates what abilities he has unlocked. Backside is both his portrait, signed version of his character card, or ID if you were at the Ghostbusters facility, the firehouse, and also clarification rules. My card will have a version of that as well, presumably. We've also got Spangler. We've got Stans. We've got Zedmore. And that's cool. And we've got ghost character cards with their various abilities, how their movement dictates, what the type of slime they use, it looks like. All that is pretty cool. I'm not going to go over each of them individually just to save on time, but that is pretty cool. Looks like we've got our scenario cards. Front is... I'm going to put some of these guys down just to make room in my hands. Scenario card, one side has all the rules for the scenario, and back side has the map and where various units are placed, which is cool. And that looks to be it. There's another... Oh, cool. So Louis Tully, it looks like, was included in the box, which is cool. I was somewhat expecting a separate box, but it's cool that he was included in there. Thought I saw his piece along the minis, which is cool. So he was only available for the deluxe version of the game, the white box I had shown you. He's not going to be in the retail version, which is cool. Sorry, retail, but I feel special for getting that. Cool, so basically you make a team of 4 busters, or if you're playing custom scenarios, more, and play the game, beat the ghosts, and win. So, moving on to equipment cards, we have a small deck right here. I think we should be out 50-something. What else can I tell you? So, while I'm opening this guy up, there's a little tab on the side you can see here to open it up, but has a little bit of difficulty opening. Doesn't seem to want to open quite yet. While I'm getting this ready, one of the things you guys may not be aware of is that I run a series of polls looking to add content to the Ghostbusters board game. Essentially, not directly, but Cryptozoic has in the past used my polls to determine what stretch goals they wanted to use for Ghostbusters Board Game 2. And if you would like to have a say in possibly what goes in the next game, or just have fun voting on what cool stuff we can have in the game, feel free to join in. So, looks like we got a series of cards in here. We just got that open. I'm going to throw that plastic away. We only got about 8 minutes, so I'm going to cut it off shortly. I'll probably stop now and after going over these cards and do a part 2. But, again, no edits. Equipment card. Front looks like it has a series of rules to it, basically level 1 and 2, or 4 rather, on this guy. Lockmore's Guide to the Lower Regions. I can't wait to go through these, because there's just going to be so many awesome Easter eggs. Here's the back side of the equipment cards. Won't go over each of them now, but oh, that looks really cool, guys. This one looks to be an event card. Baby Spookums. That's the name of a real Ghostbuster episode, which is cool. Apocalypse What Now? That's another name of a real Ghostbusters episode. That Hitchhiker's Thumb, Need a Lift. Okay, not all of these are, but just to go over them briefly, this is what the front looks like. The back for an event card. Looks like these are just things that occur over the course of the game. Need to read the rules to learn more. Yeah, sorry, I'm tempted to look in depth in each of these, but it's really cool that each of these cards have some bit of an homage. More event cards, more equipment cards. The interesting thing is they're kind of mixed up, so that you see that some of the events are mixed in with the equipment, and then another section of events. These are just how they came out of the box. I'm not sure why they did that, but it's kind of curious. So that was this version. We had flipped over cards, a section for events with a slime border. I'm not sure what that quite would mean. So event, other side is goo pile. What I suspect is the goo pile, as I understand it, I haven't read the rules, but from a high level, you find a goo pile, you have a chance of drawing a goo pile card and getting something. So like this looks to be a key item that is probably used in a scenario. This guy is an event, and I assume when you get that, you have to draw one of the event cards to see what happens. But that's kind of neat. Likewise, equipment. I guess you draw an equipment card, but that is cool. And that was that deck of cards. Cool. Let's move on. Actually, going to split this in part 2. Battery's dying, running low on recording time. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. I really appreciate it. And until next time, I'm ready to believe you. Have a good one.